and it doesn't become a library anymore. They're like this, not just with hockey. Football players, very quiet, very respectful, nice people out here in Hampstead, treating us good here all these years. You have a special needs child that's very, everyone knows about it. And then we see folks come with special needs children to come up and, you're a bit of a Pied Piper for Best Buddies and, all the type of stuff that you do. And I know it's a big part of your message to people, too. And and people seek you out, right?
Yeah, no, they do. I think I really, having my son Nolan, who has Downs, has been actually the special thing about him is he's made our family, really tight. Our family, he's the center of all our attention, and he's been great. And I know what goes into raising someone with special needs, and I just want to bring awareness. I was saying I got a phone call one time when I was in Nashville when my son was born, and a young lady named Annalise Barron reached out to me, and get a lot of requests every year, but for some reason this one sort of pulled me that way, and I had lunch with her and someone from our office, and she was telling me about this program, Best Buddies, and she wanted to bring it to into Nashville at the time and into Tennessee, and it was just satellite areas of it across the state, and I said, well, what can I do? And she said, well, I'm going to try to get it started, and I don't know how to raise money. I'm just a mom, and I want all this stuff. And I said, well, tell me what you need me to do, and I'll help you out. And so,
as they say, lend your name to it. Right?
Lend your name to it. So I did, and the first thing we did was have an ask in one of the subdivisions, and one of the players that was actually Dan Hamhouse has been in the league for a long time. Finished up in Dallas this year. Played for me, and it was actually in his subdivision, and we had an ask by a bunch of parents. We want to get this, just asking for their contributions, and we raised $30,000 that night and started the ball rolling, and then we did a lot of fundraising. We raised $180,000 that first year to get the national organization of Best Buddies to show that we were serious, and then they came on full time, and we've raised a lot of money. Annalise has raised a lot of money. She's now the national director for Best Buddies.
Baltimore has a huge campus.
It started in Georgetown.
Yeah,
and of all places, and Anthony Shriver Kennedy is the head of it. And in Tennessee, I can tell you this: in the time that I was there, this is probably the one thing when I'm all said and done, this will be the one thing I'll be the most proud of, is the fact that it is a movement in Tennessee. Best Buddies, special needs, inclusion is huge there. Every school I know in Nashville, I can't think of a school or a university that doesn't have a Best Buddy program in it, and that's pretty outstanding. And it's turned into
10 years, 12 years. How long ago was this for you?
This would be probably Nolan's 16, so it'd be 16 years ago.
Wow.
So it's been a pleasure helping him. I'm trying to work with Virginia and the Maryland groups here, so I just use my beautiful face and my big mouth and see if we can bring some awareness to a real great organization, and it really is life-changing, and it's always special to see people out and asking questions, and to me, inclusion is really big.
Well, I know why you're here tonight, too, not just because we used to be friends. We're swabbing for There Goes My Hero tonight for the Bone Marrow Registry.
Absolutely.
So it's the third year we've done that. We swabbed the coach a couple years ago before he was 55, and just got in,
just under the wire.
Canadian blood. We had to get him in under the wire. But today is the 3-year anniversary of my wife's survival, so give her a round of applause. And she drove out all by herself, and she brought the cables that made it work. So it's all good. But March 20th, that's a day that'll live in infamy in our family. So we appreciate we have someone here tonight who lost their brother to leukemia. So, those stories come to you once you're involved in the fight. And when you have a son as you do, or I have a wife who's a survivor, it's just every day someone comes up with a story, right?
It is. I think anytime you have a horse in the race, it brings a lot of meaning, and you have empathy for anybody who's going through those situations. So I think we have to live real life. Is in real life situations all the time, and there's some reality in our world sometimes that he sort of gets glossed over is probably what I'm trying to say.
Well, when Jen got sick, you were getting the job like right as she was in peril and about to get her first transplant. May and June. I remember she was in the hospital in the dark depths, and my son texts me, says, Trotz is going to get the Caps job. And I'm like, what? How's that possible?
Well, how could they do that? I know. That was his reaction. You're kidding me, right?
You do know that I had a fractured relationship with Ted Leonsis in the early go, and I became a Preds fan.
Yep.
Ted and I, about a decade ago, got together and broke some bread. And over the last 10 years, people are asking me why I haven't run buses. I would love to run some more Caps puck buses. My wife's been in and out of the hospital the last 2 years, so we're just trying to get sort of level set. We have our London trip. We're doing our Ravens trips normally this year. And, a couple years ago, you get the job in that summer. And, I think for all of us, we wondered, like, what this path was going to be. And the first thing you said to me was, I have an assistant coach whose wife's been battling cancer as well. Yeah. And, on my list of things today, and I talked to Ed about this morning, all the stuff we were going to pepper you with and talk about the California trip and the playoffs and stories and meander a little bit. I want you to talk about your assistant coaches, not just in regard to, what incredible tragedy that you had in your family and your friendship, but what these guys do besides talk to Smoke and Al down on the bench when you're too busy.
They actually, it's funny, the assistant coaches do all the work. They really do. They do.
That's why you're not an assistant coach anymore, right?
As a head coach, what you find is when you're in the minors, and I just tell you the whole progression. When you're in the minors, you do everything. You have maybe one assistant coach, and you're involved in everything. So you don't have as many people doing stuff for you. When you get to the National Hockey League at the highest level, it'll be NFL, NBA, NHL. The head coaches get pulled in so many directions, from everything from ownership to management to things that just come up that fall under maybe marketing, all that. You get pulled in a lot of different directions. So you're basically doling out responsibilities. And what I've done is I've hired very good coaches. That's one thing that I learned. Actually, Tom Ebright was one that always said, surround yourself with really smart people who will challenge you, people who will.
That's why you've had me with you for 30
years. That's right. And so I do that, and because of the fact that I say I'm going to give autonomy to this assistant coach for the power play and this one for the penalty kill, and I give them, and I don't micromanage them. I think that's one of my strengths is I don't worry. I'll say, can we do this better? Why isn't this working? And they'll fix it, or we'll talk about it through the whole group. And they do a lot of the legwork. We did something this morning, and they challenged me on a couple things, and I thought it was great because we're all in part of ownership. Yeah, I think that when you micromanage people, they don't know. They hold back, and I'm not like that. I say that you're in charge of the power play. Okay, this is what I'm looking for. Okay, go at it. And then what happens, their creative juices start to come out because you're not micromanaging. They're not wondering if you're going to look down on them for, doing it a certain way. That's not how I operate. I like to exchange ideas and all that. So I basically just manage my people. They manage their areas. And if their areas aren't going good, then I start to manage them a little bit, but it's not a micromanage by any means, and they do a lot of the tough stuff. I mean, the hours and hours of film, and I do the same thing. I got my computer, and I'm always watching the opposition for areas that I'm going to be in charge of. They're looking at the areas that they're in charge of, and we meet every morning. Tomorrow morning we got the Calgary Flames, and we're going to have a whole hour and a half, 2-hour meeting before we have our meeting with our players tomorrow. And that'll start at 7:15, 7:30, and we have a 9:15 meeting. And tomorrow morning on the Calgary Flames, just the Calgary Flames, and then we go from there. We'll have a morning skate, and then all that stuff. And we do a meeting at night. I have another meeting at night with the group, and then we take on the Calgary Flames. So they do a lot of the work, and they're the guys that are really doing, I would say, the bulk of the work a lot of times. I have to make the big decisions, but they do the bulk of the tough stuff.
I was going to ask, what are you in charge of other than everything, right?
sort of. You're in charge of everything, and but not in charge of a lot. just the big things.
I'll just say this, all the years I've known you, and in Nashville before we had text, I would literally call your office, and I sort of would get a weird time that I sort of knew you might be there, and I could reach you, or usually you'd reach back. And now with text, every time I look to text you, I'm like, I wonder what he's doing right now, and I can never find a time where he's probably just having a beer, watching some film. I never think like that with you.
No, no,
because
we don't.
literally the way the schedule is and the buy, and I know I'm not nuts. You've done this a whole lot longer than I have, but it feels like there are no down days. I mean, finding the night tonight, we started on this back in October, by the way, trying to find the right night. And, then the Super Bowl, my wife and I are going away, and the weather might be bad, and they're on the West Coast. And we settled on tonight, which I think was a great night, by the way, to be here. But, you don't have a lot of nights that you can come and do this. And I appreciate your wife and your family and everybody for allowing you to come out here once a year. You come to Baltimore. All the old Skipjacks people here. Sherry's here. Everybody's here. Wearing a Jacks jersey, which I left home. I wore the Brigade jersey to be respectful to Ted Leonsis. But you don't have a lot of downtime. I mean, between the rink, the plane, the little bit of time you get with your family, and then back, there's another game. Somebody said they play 4 or 5 nights a week, and I'm like, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like you used to do that.
You know what? You did, but it just, I think, as your life changes, it seems it gets more compressed.
Very much so.
And even on days off, we do give days off for the players. I'm a big believer in at least a day off a week, and depending on the schedule, probably too. But it's not a day off for the coaches usually. We have, the great thing about technology is I have a computer and I've got 1,000 clips I spent on Sunday. I was in the office from 7:30 till 6 p.m. And that was my off day.
Now I know where to find it. Good.
Yeah,
okay,
so,
good. Now I know.
And actually, the off days are the days you get the most work done.
So
you really do.
What are you looking for in those clips when you do it?
Well, pre-scout, obviously, we're looking at the Calgary Flames. I'll look at the big picture. I'm looking at cadence of the coach. I'm looking at who's going really well for them. I'm looking at systematically what I see systematically. We have tomorrow, I believe, Brett Leonhardt's going to present the Calgary Flames, who's our video coach. And he has watched probably the Calgary Flames last anywhere, depending on what he's how close they are in terms of, sometimes they're on a bye week or they don't have 3 games a week. But he's probably looked at their last 3 to 5 games complete. Every face-off, what they do off every draw, the win, loss in every zone, how they play the rushes, how they he's probably looked at, I'm going to say 1,000 clips, and he's got to bring it down to about 70. And you start doing that. The problem with that is that you watch 1,000 clips, just like anyways, you go, I like that one better than that one. Okay.
Paralysis by analysis?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. And you're looking at maybe a neutral zone forecheck, and you're watching 50 neutral zone forechecks, but you only need 2. And so you say, I'll keep that one. That one's better. And then you look at it, and then it becomes very time consuming. So they put in a lot of hours. We'll break them down. We'll get our matchups. We'll let the players know. We'll do their power play meetings, their penalty kill. We do a shootout meeting so that the goaltenders know how the shootout guys, some of their best stuff is. We will do our goaltending coach does a breakdown on the opposition goaltender, which will probably be Brian Elliott tomorrow. And it all of a sudden there's all these meetings. And I remember when I started in this game, we would have, okay, we're sending 2 in, and we just worried about what we did. And with technology, we can see every game now. And so,
is it giving you an advantage?
I think, one of the things that it's given us an advantage, I think all staffs work really hard. Once in a while, you'll have something you can do that gives you an advantage, absolutely.
And you see a goal scored the next night, and you're like, I saw that,
yeah, and the players recognize that, too.
Sure.
And that's an advantage. So we're looking for that advantage. The problem is that everything we have,
they have to.
They have to. And so we're looking for the next thing all the time. And sometimes we do, the players do go, okay, I've seen this a few times. But there's some players that just, you could tell them and they've got it. They're just, audio learners, and there's guys that are visual learners, and there's guys that need both, and they need to do it on the ice. So we try to use all those components. And I know I had Matt Hendricks, who was here, awesome player. Matt Hendricks, remember, he's an all-in guy, but he needed all three. He was a smart player, but you couldn't just talk to him and say, if you do this, this will happen. You'd have to go talk to him, show him on film, and then go on the ice. And then he has it. But if you skipped one of those steps, it was a 50-50. and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just every player is a little different. Nick Backstrom, you could just say, hey, I need you to do that, and he's got it. You don't need to see it. Don't have to practice it. I got it.
But there's some guys that intuitively have more sixth sense for hockey. I mean, just because they're all at that level, they're not all learning at the same level and picking things up. And some guys really are like naturals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think guys just absorb it. I think the guys that have those, what we call hockey IQ, they just see it. They see the game as you're talking about
that's
it.
who Gretzky was, right?
Yeah,
I would say, what was his special skill? He knew what everyone on the ice was going to do before they did it.
Exactly. And you see it in basketball. Great players have that instinct, IQ, whatever you want to say. They've
Tom Brady, Ray Lewis, in every sport, right?
Yeah. They just have it. And the rest of us mortals have to teach it.
But he's doing okay. So far, so good.
So far, yeah.
Eddie's got a million questions. I'm going to let
Go
him
ahead.
go nuts.
So let's start Mitch Korn. Tell everybody about Mitch Korn, and because I think he's a unique individual.
He's funnier than you.
He's way funnier than me.
Yeah, he is.
He's a Mitch is. I've had Mitch since day one, so '98. So I had met Mitch at a Roger Nielsen coaches clinic, probably in the early '90s. He had talked about goaltending. And
what were you doing at the time? Portland? Are you Skipjacks maybe?
No, I might have been University of Manitoba, or I might have been maybe Skipjacks.
Okay.
And I heard he spoke about goaltending, and I went, wow. He just looks at it way different than anybody I've ever heard talk about goaltending. As I moved up the ranks a little bit, and I got the job finally in Nashville. I was really a glorified coach the first year. I didn't have a team, and so I was really the pro scout. I was sort of one of the eyes for the expansion draft, and so they used to have a team in Lexington, Kentucky. They were the farm team of the Buffalo Sabres, and they were the Thoroughblades. No, they were with San Jose, sorry. And the Rochester Americans were coming in to Lexington to play the Thoroughblades.
And Jody Gage was in his 31st year playing for the Rochester Amherst.
And I knew that Mitch Korn was the goalie coach for the Buffalo Sabres, and he was working for the Buffalo Sabres and also working at the University of Miami, Ohio. And knowing the location of Lexington, I was pretty sure he was going to be at that game. And I scheduled myself to go to that game and pre-scout it. And I sat in the press box, and they put me right next to Mitch Korn. And I had known Mitch from some of the coaches' clinics.
Now, Hasek's the best player on earth at this point, right?
Yeah, he's Hasek's.
He was becoming the best goalie on earth. Okay.
Yeah, and so we're just having idle chat, and he goes,
which he loves to do, by the way.
Yes, he does. And he said to me, he goes, do you have any idea who you want to be your goaltending coach? Because you're going to have to hire a staff. I said, absolutely. I'm looking at him. And I just sort of just stopped, and he goes, what'd you say? I said, well, I'm just looking at him. And he looked at me again, and he goes, like you're looking at a guy right now? No, I'm looking at him. And he goes, really? And I go, I can't talk to you because you're probably under contract, right? And he goes, only till June. I'm going to call you. And that's how we sort of got together.
Is that tampering?
Yeah.
Head Coach Barry Trott's out with us. We're at Greenmount Station. We're swabbing for the bone marrow registry. On the assistant thing, I I went back, and this is a little tale of how long I've been doing this, but in 1990, I found my headline. The day that Terry Murray replaced Brian Murray as the coach of the Caps, I found the story, because I'm very proud of it. It was like above the fold and whatever. And the little middle piece was a little gray story that said, what's happening with the Skipjacks now that the Capitals have changed coaches and promoted the Skipjacks coach. It was a brother being fired and another brother replacing him, and you had worked for both of these guys. And the first time I ever typed your name, it was in that box. It said, the team will be taken over in Newmarket by Jack Button, the late, great Jack Button, who was a mentor to you and to me, quite frankly, as well. And it said, and Western Scout Barry Trotz. And I thought it's cool. He had my son's name, Barry Trotz. Great. So I type it in, and I knew him a little bit from around the rink and Tom Ebright or whatever. Next thing you know, he comes in and becomes part of this, craziness here. But you were not an assistant coach much, right? You've been the guy far longer. So when I ask you what assistant coaches do, and you say they do the grunt work, the hard work, all the work or whatever, somehow you weren't an assistant coach all that long. When it really comes down to it. You didn't spend 5 years in the NHL as an assistant, right?
No, I didn't.
Well, you are a smart man. I mean, you're smarter even than I give you credit for.
You know me. That's not true. I got very fortunate, and sometimes you talk about obstacles that get in your way. I did anyways. I brought it up. When I was 19 years old, and I just turned 20, and I was going to play my last year junior, I was invited to the Washington Capitals camp. And in that summer, I was a pretty good ball player, believe it or not. I could actually run. Never know by watching me now, but I could play. I was a pretty good athlete. And I got hurt in the summer playing baseball, of all things. Wrecked my back. Went to sort of rehabbed it and got it back. Got to the Washington Capitals camp and was playing. And this back thing kept coming up. I finished the season. Went to University of Manitoba the next year. And I got through the season again, but I was in pain, a lot of pain. Limped around all summer, tried to rehab it. It wasn't coming around. And I went to Wayne Fleming and said, he was my coach at the time, and Wayne's a Hall of Fame coach. He's been around for a long time, and he became a great mentor and a great friend. And I was one of his captains, and he says, I know you want to play, but I said, I can't even walk. And he says, well, you keep rehabbing, and once you be, push pucks for me and learn about this, and if you come back, I want you to play. And I said, oh, I'll do that. And I was going to school and I had a part-time job, and I'd push pucks, and then Wayne would be always handing me hockey stuff, little notes and papers and system stuff, and kept handing it over. And then I got this Roger Nielsen thing in the summer, and I went through the whole year, and I said, I can't play anymore. So he says, but I think you're going to be a pretty good coach. I think you could be a coach. And I said, well, I never thought about it.
You'd never seen yourself in that role?
No, and I really didn't.
Well, when you're a player, you see yourself
as a player,
drinking out of the cup and playing,
exactly,
on a third line somewhere, right?
Yeah. And so I did that. Next year, I did it again. I was assistant coach for Wayne, and I was going to school and working at the same time. And then the following year, I was working for Burroughs Computers. I don't know if they even exist anymore. Big computer company, and they gave me real flexible hours, so being in school was awesome. And I got a phone call from my hometown team, a junior A team in Dauphin, Manitoba. And they phoned me and says, we're out of money. We're about to fold. We can't pay much, but we need a coach and a GM. I'm 21 at the time. 21 or 20. Yeah, I guess I just turned 21, maybe 22. And my wife, who's the smartest person in the world, she goes, well, you can't play. And we had been together for a while, and I knew I was going to marry her. And she was still in school. And she says, well, why don't you give it a try? Try it now before, you have kids and family, and, You get promoted at Burroughs. get promoted at Burroughs. I thought I was going to work there forever. And
was this before or after Jack told you? The only reason you're here, you might be a coach.
Yeah, this was after. This is a couple of years after.
So Jack had told you already you were going to be a
Jack
coach.
Button already fingered me as a. You're not that good of a player, but you're going to be a hell of a. You might be a good minor league leader or a coach someday, is what he said to me. And I'm like, I came here to be a player, you know.
That's Jack.
So, anyways, a long story, trying to make it a little shorter, is I decided to go to my hometown, and they were in the hole, they were about to fold. How am I going to get this? I had to live with mom and dad for a year. I asked them, can I move in, back in, and I'm going to coach the Kings and see if I can get them out of debts. And my dad sells 50-50s to this day for the junior hockey team. He's done it for like 40 years. And
your dad probably thought it was the greatest thing ever, right?
Huh?
You coming back to coach hockey?
Yeah, they didn't mind, me coming back and seeing if I could save the team. And my dad loved the team, and so I did. And I was coaching GM at 21 or 22, and I worked my way up the ladder. We had pretty successful teams. I took the youngest team in the league, and we got to the second round the first year, and we had a real good team. And then 2 years there, we went to the finals one year, I think. And then the University of Manitoba job came open. It was Wayne Fleming was going over to Europe for a couple of years, so I applied for it and I got it. And that's really when it took off. Jack called me that year. He was and said, would you mind doing some Western scouting for us in Manitoba? I was doing that anyways at the University of Manitoba. And would you do some pre-scout for us for when and I had played for Brian Murray. When the team comes out west to play the Jets, Winnipeg Jets, they were still there. Calgary Flames, all those teams which came into Winnipeg all the time.
Edmonton, you didn't have to scout them. It's just like they're going to beat us.
Yeah. And so I started doing that, and they liked my reports and what I was doing. And Brian knew me, and I started coming to training camp, and they started throwing me on the ice the odd time. And I got promoted from part-time scout. Wayne Fleming came back from Europe. And I was going to go, this coaching thing was working out, so I was going to be assistant coach, assistant GM in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan with Greg Quisley.
I was going to ask, when you won in Dauphin, did you get to go someplace cool like Medicine Hat or Moose Jaw? And he did. I was going to say Moose Jaw.
I almost did.
All right, you go to Moose Jaw.
I was offered the job, and almost the next day or the same day, Jack Button phoned me and says, I want to promote you to full-time Western Scout. I think you did a great job. I said, well, this coaching thing's going. And he goes, I think I could work both for you. That you might still be coaching, but I think give it a shot. And I talked to my wife, and so I talked to Jack, and I said, if we're going to do this, I need a 3-year contract, so that I know I have security. But after a year, if it doesn't work out, or if I feel it's not for me, you don't owe me anything. I can jump out of it. I had an out clause after a year. And my wife says, well, do it. Just, you don't know, do it. And I did it, and they liked what I did, and they promoted me to head Western Scout within a year. And then I thought I was going to be in Vancouver and be the head Western Scout. The first guys that I was a big part of drafting were Ole Kolzik and Byron Defoe. And so we were put an offer on a house. I thought I was going to be the head Western Scout for the Washington Capitals for the next 25, 30, 40 years. And lo and behold, that day we were closing, my wife says, why don't you just phone Jack just to make sure that you're not going to move? So I'm like... And
Vancouver's nice this time of year.
Yeah, and he just moved me there. So I was going, okay, there's no chance. She gave me that look, and you guys know.
Yep.
You guys know.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are married. You know.
You
know, you give it to him, right? Like, I got that look, so I pick up the phone, and I phone him, and he goes, well, you know what, the draft's in Vancouver. I was going to talk to you next week about this. I want you to come to Baltimore to do some scouting and be an assistant coach.
To meet this great reporter.
The
beat writer.
And so I looked at my wife, and I go, how'd you know that? And she goes, I didn't, but just listen to me. And lo and behold, I said yes, and I came out to Baltimore, and I started with Robbie Laird. Robbie did a real good job. I learned a lot from Robbie. And I was in Baltimore. They made a change. I thought I was out the door with Robbie as well, and I met with David Poyle, and I came home that day after meeting with David Poyle, and I said to my wife, I had 2 young children. We were making very little money at the time, and I said, I think I just got fired. I'm not sure though. And David said, come and see me on Monday. But I thought we were packing up and going. And David came and says, you got a good friend in Baltimore. And it was Tommy Bright, who stuck out his neck for me, I believe. He never told me, but I'm pretty sure it was him. And I got a 1-year contract with the Skipjacks. We got in.
Who were broke.
And
absolutely broke.
And didn't have. And then the worst part was probably is we only had 2 veteran players. We gave me a whole team of all first-year guys for the most part, maybe a couple second-year guys. And we made the playoffs, and we took on a Binghamton Ranger that I think finished about 68 points ahead of us. They were the powerhouse. They said
the Rangers were so good, those guys couldn't get up to the show, right?
Yeah, there was Matthias Nordstrom and Kovalev, and they had a loaded team. They set all kinds of American Hockey League records, and we took them to 7 games. And the next year we moved to Portland, and we had great success up there the next couple of years. And then I ended up going to Nashville. But
you have not been an assistant much.
No,
right? Literally, right?
Literally I have not. And
would you even know what to do?
No. No. Actually, I was assistant for Team Canada. I didn't like it.
Really?
I didn't like it. Yeah, it was so you're so out of your element sometimes because someone else is bossing you around.
What do I do?
It's Babcock, right?
Yeah. And I was like, what? You want me to do what?
What does my badge say? He is head coach of the Washington Cats. Barry Trott's out with us tonight at Greenmount Station. The crowd here has been very quiet, but I assure you it's full. Make some noise. There, Ed Frankovic's here. We'll step out. We'll take a break. We're going to come back we're going to talk about my favorite subject, drinking from the Stanley Cup. Is that fair to do? Can we do that?
Well, you can. I haven't done it.
I know, but we're going to talk about it. Back for more from Greenmount Station right after this.